Welcome back to Pokemon Platinum, everyone. Today, I'm going to beat the game with only the Lopunny-Line. And this experience is likely going to be quite frustrating, because this cute little rabbit evolves with high friendship. From Generation 2 to 7, the threshold for this evolution is 220. That is nearly a maxed friendship stat. And what might be one of the most hilarious pieces of Pokemon trivia is the fact that Lopunny starts with a base friendship of 0. It in fact is the only non-legendary Pokemon to start this way. Completely contrasting this is its evolved form, Lopunny. It starts with a whopping 140 base friendship. Game Freak, what are you trying to imply by this? I think we all have an idea what this Pokemon is based off of after all. What they're probably implying is that it evolved because it had high friendship, so yeah, that makes sense that Lopunny would start with 140 base friendship. I looked it up to see if you could just obtain it as a fully evolved Pokemon in Generation 4, and no you can't. That led me to think that the base friendship value was irrelevant. However, it's not entirely true, because if you trade someone a Lopunny, its friendship value will be reverted to its base friendship, ensuring that it still hits fairly hard with a move like Return. And that brings us to the powerful normal move's counterpart, which I never thought would be relevant for a solo challenge, but all of that changes today. I received my starter, Lopunny, and faced the rival in the first battle. And here, I want you to note, my friendship value is 0. But don't you worry, let's examine this cute little bunny's move pool. It starts with Splash, Pound, Defense Curl, and Foresight. 3 of these moves are going to be very important. Splash, of course, is just completely useless. At level 6, it learns Endure, and then at level 13, it gets Frustration. This is Return's counterpart, and it has a higher base power when the Pokemon has a lower friendship value. As friendship increases, Frustration's power decreases. Just so everyone's aware, 120 friendship is when Return becomes stronger than Frustration, so we will be watching for that threshold, because in Pokemon Platinum you gain access to the Return TM immediately. Well, as soon as you've received the Pokedex. After that, I catch 2 HM users, and then I head north towards Jubilife City. Along the way, I fight all the trainers as well as wild Pokemon that show up, because I am going to need to level up as fast as possible. After all, Rourke is first, and I am a normal type with only normal type moves. That said, with the same type attack bonus, Pound has an effective power of 60, and Defense Curl will be very useful against his physical attackers. Luckily for me, Lopunny gets access to Jump Kick at level 23, but I'm hoping I won't need to level up that much. That said, part of me fears the fact that once I receive Frustration at level 13, if I continue leveling too much, its base power will just go down. I don't think I've ever had a situation like this in a solo challenge, where if I train and increase my stats and level, the power of the moves on my set decrease. After button mashing through all the dialogue in the city, I go north, fighting the 3 trainers here for experience. After that, I pick up the Quick Claw, but honestly, I could have skipped this. These rabbit Pokemon are extremely fast. For base stats, Lopunny has 55 HP, 66 attack, 44 defense and special attack, 56 special defense, breaking the trend of multiples of 11, which really bothers me, and 85 speed. When it evolves to Lopunny, its stats become 65 HP, 76 attack, 84 defense, 54 special attack, 96 special defense, and 105 speed. This line is sort of all over the place with what it's trying to accomplish. It is a fast Pokemon with decently passable defenses and an okay attack stat with very little special attack. I guess they gave it Mega Lopunny, which solves a lot of these problems, because in that case it has 136 attack, making it a fast physical attacker, which I think is just a far better niche for it to fill. I face the rival next on Route 203. He's not a problem because the Chimchar doesn't know any fighting type moves yet. The remainder of the route has 5 other trainers, but I'm only going to fight 4 of them, avoiding the guy that has Machop. I know that Machop won't do much damage since my rabbit is not very heavy. That said, it still is super effective damage and I don't want to chance things. Inside Orberg Gate, there are 2 trainers. Both of them don't have any rock types, so I face them for additional experience and then head to the next city. Inside the mine, I catch myself a Geodude, and then I saved before facing Worker Colin. He has a Geodude and Machop, and maybe it wasn't the best idea to face him, but I justified this decision because I wanted the experience so that I could level up to 13 to gain access to Frustration. With only 44 friendship and the same type attack bonus, this normal type move has an effective power of 126. This move will have diminishing returns, but for now it's going to be very useful for training. It helps me defeat the other worker in the mine who has a Geodude, as well as the trainers inside of Rourke's gym. With them out of the way, I've cleared all but one optional trainer in the early game, and I didn't want to backtrack to him, so I decided to face wild Pokemon north of the city to gain more experience. I'm going to be here for a little while, and to give you an accurate sense of the pacing of this playthrough, let's talk about the friendship mechanics while I do this grinding. Here's a piece of trivia that many of you let me know about in the comments of my videos a long time ago. In Pokemon Crystal, if a Pokemon is leveled up in the location where you first obtained it, then it gains twice as much friendship. Now for solo challenges, this isn't particularly relevant because I'm always obtaining my starter in Elm's lab and you can't face Pokemon in that location. Now that would be relevant here in Generation 4 because you obtain your starter on a route, but unfortunately for me, this is no longer a mechanic in Generation 4. There are a lot of ways to increase friendship, like giving your Pokemon a massage or grooming it, or giving it friendship-raising berries. However, I don't have access to any of those methods right now. The available levers that I can pull are level up or teach it a TM or HM. I also really want to avoid having my Pokemon faint. That said, if I reset, it doesn't actually matter because I'm going to be resetting to the point where my friendship was intact. Also, the friendship lost from fainting is only 1, so it's quite inconsequential. On the other hand, between the values of 0 to 99 friendship, leveling up will give me +5, and then once I hit 100 to 199, leveling up will give +3. There are diminishing returns in gaining friendship, so between 200 and 255, a level up is only going to give +2. Now, once I am free of the constraints of the early game, I will be able to use vitamins to increase my Pokemon's friendship. So that's something to keep in mind for later on as I try to get myself a Lopunny as soon as possible. I train until level 20, which brings my friendship up to 85. Now, Frustration's base power has dropped to 102, and I didn't want to invest in 3 more levels to jump kick because it's going to take a very long time. Instead, with Defense Curl on my side, I decided to face Rourke to see if it was possible. His first Pokemon is Geodude, and it only knows 2 moves, Stealth Rock and Rock Throw. Because it's going to set up the entry hazards right away, I am going to start with Defense Curl and boost my defense as much as is possible so that for the rest of the fight, I take minimal damage. You might wonder why I'm holding the Quick Claw. Honestly, it's just because I'm used to Rock Sand, having Rock Tomb and lowering your speed. And in this case, in Platinum, there is no better held item available because you don't get access to berries until after this fight. During my setup, there is some bad luck because Geodude crits with Rock Throw, taking me down to half health. Once I reach +6, I use Frustration, and it does a decent amount, over a third. Because of that, I think there might actually be a chance that I can do this. Rourke buys time to get more chip damage in using a potion, but I finish the Geodude off, and I have 20 health remaining when he sends in Onix. Frustration is doing less here because Onix has massive defense. That said, its attack stat is completely awful, and it is doing very little with each attack. Rourke uses another potion, Frustration gets a critical hit, which is nice, but I'm still taking damage here and there, and by the time I knock out his second Pokemon, I have 15 hit points left over for his most offensively oriented Pokemon, Cranidos. Buneary hits with Frustration, and it does half. I can't believe that. The Cranidos' headbutt only inflicts 4 points of damage. My next Frustration leaves it hanging with just a sliver of health. It does 4 more damage, so Buneary survives. Rourke has no potions left over, and with that, I win on my first attempt. Alright, I am really happy I did not need Jump Kick, and I am also so grateful that I decided to train to level 20 because doing this at a lower level was just not going to be possible. I'm going to take a moment now and talk about my nickname because it is not actually just a generic name for a cute bunny Pokemon. When I was a kid, my mom took me to see the Stuart Little movie in theaters. By the way, that movie basically should have just been a giant ad for Petland because in the same mall that I saw it in, there was a pet store. We went there and there was this incredibly cute white bunny, which of course I had to beg my mom to buy for me. Eventually she did, and we went home with a bunny, which I later named Princess. So before I was a proud cat dad, I was a bunny person. The next section of the game gives me access to berries, and after defeating the grunts in the Valley Windworks, I take my time to fight a few more wild Pokemon so that I gain access to Jump Kick before I face Commander Mars. Her Purugly is honestly terrifying, and I wanted to be prepared for it. At level 23, I easily one-shot the Zubat. Purugly is next. It uses Fake Out, dealing chip damage for free, and then I use Jump Kick. By the way, if this move misses, I will take half of the damage that I would have dealt in recoil. That doesn't happen, Jump Kick connects, and the powerful fighting type move gets the knockout. As we head north towards Eterna Forest, let's check in with my friendship. It's around 108. I am half the way there to my evolution. The current pacing is a little bit skewed because I had to do a lot of training before Rourke, but I was anticipating that I would evolve around Maylene at this point. That said, things are kind of rough for normal types in the next section of the game. While Gardenia is not necessarily a threat, following her is Fantina, and I have to keep Foresight on my moveset just so that I have options against her. While Baniri can learn a lot of moves that hit her Pokemon, none of those TMs are available by the time I reach her. Well, that's not entirely true. I could learn Grass Knot, but I hope you understand why that is not a good option. Also, once I defeat Fantina, I have to face Maylene, who is a fighting type specialist. Obviously, she has super effective damage against me. And then Wake is next, and he's probably one of the strongest gym leaders in this game. Plus, Byron is a steel type trainer who technically should be good against a normal type Pokemon, but I think access to Jump Kick will be enough for him. Saying all of that, I want to put in the time now doing training to gain levels and friendship. Also, training against Pokemon in the forest is a fantastic way to gain experience because Cheryl heals you every time the battle ends. Once I say goodbye to Cheryl, she gives me a gift, which is the Soothe Bell, and this is a fantastic item for this playthrough. When a Pokemon holds it, it gains 50% more friendship, making the Lopunny evolution just a little bit closer. Once I make it to the Eterna City Gym, my friendship is 124, and by the time I defeat all of the trainers, it has reached 129, and that means it is time to replace frustration with return. With that, I am now ready to face Gardenia. Turtwig is first, and this thing is so annoying. After surviving a single hit from return, it sets up Reflect. Luckily, I get a critical hit knocking it out on the next turn, but maybe that isn't lucky because then she sends in Cherrim and it uses Leech Seed. This is not a nice scenario for me. Every turn, I will now have 1/8 of my total HP sapped. By the way, this move feels almost broken when Executor uses it against me in Generation 1, but in those games it only drains 1/16 of the max health every turn, so yeah, it's awful in this case. By the time I knock out her second Pokemon, I only have 10 hit points remaining, so of course, Roserade finishes me. Oh, for some reason, whenever my Pokemon's HP drops to 0, all of the enemy's stats, with the exception of HP, disappear. My software for Generation 4 has been getting a lot better behind the scenes, but there's still a lot of work I have to do. For example, in my Heatran video, I did say that I wanted to show Grass Knot's effective power. After I lose one more time, I decided to pause the game, implement this code, and now Grass Knot's effective power is displaying. I also took this time to implement a bunch of other non-standard moves for the opponents, so things like Return will accurately display now as well. I'm hoping in the near future that I can display things like screens in battle, but I haven't quite located them in RAM yet. During the next fight, it really sunk in that this is just not going to happen against Gardenia. Even at level 28, I think I need to do more grinding. This is a little bit unfortunate because I fought all of the trainers until this point, and I also no longer have access to the free heals from Cheryl. Luckily for me, Return is dealing massive damage, so I can easily polish off wild Pokemon at a decent rate. Plus, every time I train now, I'm secretly hoping that I'm gonna get another shiny. At level 30, I come back to face Gardenia again. Now I'm able to 2-hit the Turtwig, well, she burns a super potion on it, healing it to full, and then I have to take 3 more hits to knock it out. Though this scenario is decent because I am stalling out Reflect. My next hit does about 1/3 to Cherim, then Reflect wears off and I take it down to red health. She uses a potion, and I'm able to knock it out with 2 more hits, so I have green health left over when Roserade hits the field. Return does much more than half, the Citrus Berry heals it into green, and then it uses Stun Spore. Okay, using a Cherry Berry here was probably the better choice. I went for an Oran Berry, which does heal a little bit, but I don't think it was as important. I get lucky because the status condition doesn't prevent my next move, and with that, Roserade goes down and I earn myself the 2nd badge. I continue my extensive training fighting all of the galactic members before I go up against Commander Jupiter. I expected this one to be fairly simple, but I forgot that the poison type resists the fighting type, so the Skuntank is only going to take neutral damage from Jump Kick. As a result, Return ends up being the better move. Now, this is going to be a trend that continues throughout the majority of the rest of the video, because Return is just going to get so absurdly powerful that even when I have coverage moves, they're usually not going to be the right choice. Night Slash isn't doing very much, so Commander Jupiter wasn't a problem. I backtracked to Eterna Forest to pick up an Ether, a rare candy, as well as the TM for Substitute. By the way, I have recently discovered that you can purchase another one of these TMs in the game corner for only 2,000 coins. That means I don't need to be extremely careful to keep this move on my set after I teach it. This gives me so much more strategical flexibility. And speaking of strategy, I want to talk about how I am starting to approach these platinum playthroughs. In the Heatran video, I went through all the rare candies I pick up in the run, and they total 20. Because this is far more than any other game that I am currently solo running, I am having to rethink my approach to using these items. In a game like Pokemon Yellow, the best time to use them really is before Lorelei to maximize your first playthrough potential. In Johto, if you're using a powerful Pokemon, that tends to be the case as well. After all, you can usually just defeat Red using Curse. In Emerald, it is also the case as long as you're not weak to Steven's Rock and Steel-type Pokemon. Platinum, on the other hand, is a completely different beast. Gym Leader's Pokemon have significantly better movesets in this game, and as a result, when you go up against one that is going to be challenging for your Pokemon, they generally wall you much harder than they did in previous games. Because of this, I'm starting to plan to use early rare candies, somewhere between 5 to 7, before one of the gym leaders that will cause significant delays. Then I can use the remaining 13 rare candies to boost my level prior to the league, like I do in other games. In the first 8 episodes of the series, I found that I ended the game far over leveled, so with the coming releases, hopefully my level at finish will get lower and lower. I think in Platinum, this metric has the potential to be much more interesting and indicative of success than it was in former titles. That said, in this run, I don't want to go into Wayward Cave because Lopunny cannot learn Earthquake, so I'm not even going to pick up that rare candy, giving me access to 1 less in total. I am going to grab this hidden rare candy though, and that's my first one, so I'm not going to have the ability to boost my level when facing Fantina. That said, there are a few items that I can pick up that will help. For example, the Shell Bell, which is just free in this game. That always seems wrong to me. Before heading into the gym, I teach Buneary Substitute because this move is great, and then I'm ready to face some ghost types. Fantina's lead is Duskull. Now Substitute is a fantastic counter for it because I can prevent Will-O-Wisp from burning me. Also, the Duskull's moves in general are just quite bad. I know Future Sight has base 80 power, but it takes 2 turns to be useful, so no, it is not going to be impactful today. After using Foresight to identify the ghost, I can then use Return to knock it out. I have not yet found the Foresight flag in the RAM, so unfortunately we don't get to see how much damage Return would be doing once it's used. I'm not sure it's extremely interesting though, because I one-hit the following Haunter, and then the Mismagius just spams Confuse Ray against me. I think this is because it wants to inflict a status condition before dealing damage, but the AI doesn't see that I have a substitute in place. I have yet to track down AI documentation for Generation 4. If you know of any, please let me know so I can share it with everyone else. As a result of this assumed AI interaction, I get an easy win against the Ghost type specialist. Outside of the city, I have to face the rival. It's really annoying being a physical attacker against the Staravia, especially when I have Substitute on my set, but I don't have the time to set it up to avoid this ability. As a result, it looks like I'm doing just under half to the Monferno, but sometimes appearances can be deceiving, and my second hit does enough to finish it off. Baniri levels up here. By the way, now I'm at 172 friendship. It has the chance to learn Dizzy Punch, but I decided against it. From there, his following 2 Pokemon are not an issue to deal with. When reflecting on this footage and recording the voiceover, I realized that I made a few mistakes here in Solaceon Town. First, I decided to take the extra trip to pick up the PP up, but I really don't need this because Return has a maximum PP of 20. Also, I go into the Solaceon Ruins to pick up the Defog TM, and I'm starting to think that this should be something I skip in most of my playthroughs. It takes a decent amount of time to obtain it, and I can also teach this normal type Shockwave to bypass accuracy checks. So the mandatory battles on the route just north of here, which is Foggy, will not have the frustration of field lowered accuracy. In the future, I'm going to preemptively think about this and save some time when I can. On Route 215, I make sure to face Black Belt Gregory to pick up the Fist Plate. By the way, I don't end up using this item, which is a third mistake because it's really good, especially when paired with Jump Kick, and there are definitely going to be some battles ahead where it would have been useful. Just be aware that I realized this was a mistake. Now, just like in Generation 2, there is a trainer named Dennis, and he is very good in Platinum. He has a Gligar, which makes sense, it's a Generation 2 Pokemon. He also has a Buizel and a Drifblim. This thing is terrifying. It knows the move Ominous Wind, and it also has the ability Aftermath, which deals damage to you when you knock it out. Plus, it is a ghost type, and so until this point in the playthrough, I have had to keep Foresight on my set. That being said, I could have just taught Shockwave right before this fight because I just obtained the TM. However, because of Baniri's base stats, I have been trying to avoid special moves altogether. In Veilstone City, a lot of things are going to change. First, I pick up the coin case, and then I buy 1,000 coins, allowing me to get access to the Silk Scarf, which will boost the power of normal type moves by 20%. Then, in the department store, I sell some items and buy only 1 vitamin, which is unfortunate, but every little bit helps. This boosts Baniri's friendship up to 202. I go south of the city next to gain a little bit more experience, and then after defeating all the trainers in the gym, my bunny is now level 40 with 210 friendship. This is the moment where I'm going to use my initial rare candies. I have a total of 4, and each one is going to boost my friendship by 3 points. This allows me to just barely make it to 220 friendship and evolve my Baniri into Lopunny before facing Maylene. As this battle starts, let's just take a brief moment and look at the intro animation that Lopunny has when it comes out of the Pokeball. It kind of hops around, which is really cute, and then it looks back at you, which is so adorable. There is going to be at least one person in the comments who comes at me for complimenting this Pokemon on anything, but I really like rabbits, and this Pokemon is much better when compared with another one like Diggersby. Meditite is first. By the way, I really should have the Silk Scarf here. I don't need the Soothe Bell anymore. That is just an oversight. On the first turn, I set up Substitute, and then I knock her lead out with 1 hit from Return. Next is Machoke. Return just barely doesn't knock it out. It wastes its time with Focus Energy. She doesn't try to heal it, and I finish it off. Last is Lucario, but the fighting type does not resist itself. As a result, its steel typing is a weakness, because Jump Kick is super effective. In this case, Lopunny's legs really do come through for me, because she doesn't miss against this other slightly suspect Pokemon, and as a result, I defeat the fighting type specialist without a hitch. We're going to make a fairly major time skip now because there isn't much to say in the next portion of the game. In Pastoria City, I have to face the rival. I have now figured out that I should be using the Silk Scarf, and even after Intimidate, I one-shot his lead. Monferno has Mach Punch, but it isn't doing very much, and I don't even take half by the time I knock it out over 3 turns. Roselia goes down to a single hit, and so does Buizel. This levels Lopunny up to level 46, where I learn Bounce in the place of Foresight, just so I have direct damage against Ghost-type Pokemon. Okay, so now let's face Crasher Wake. First is Gyarados. It intimidates Lopunny, reducing increasing my attack stat to 64, and I didn't realize it at the time, but I really should have taught Shockwave in the place of Bounce. This move would be so much better against Gyarados, plus my special attack is higher than my physical attack after the turn 1 Intimidate. Making matters worse in this fight, I didn't heal before it, so after my substitute goes down, I have very little health left over, and Floatzel easily 2 shots. The next battle is a lot different because I actually healed. I can set up substitute and knock the Gyarados out, taking only 25% damage in the process. Against the Floatzel, because of my damage range, I can just spam return and knock it out. Last is Quagsire, but it can't really do that much. I thought that Yawn might be the most devastating move, but I think in the end it would actually be Water Pulse, confusing me. That said, it's using Mud Shot because it wants to control my speed, but that really isn't a good play because Lopunny is very fast, plus the fight is almost over. With 2 returns, I am victorious. Next, I have to chase a Galactic Grunt around. I clear out the Psyducks with a Super Potion, and on my way to Celestic Town, I pick up the TM for Shadow Ball. Okay, it's time to face Cyrus. Jump Kick is really good against the Sneasel, by the way. 340 effective power. From there, return just one-shots his final 2 Pokemon, and I take an easy victory. I'm hoping the final battle against him is going to be this simple. Now that I have access to Surf, I backtrack to the Valley Windworks to pick up the TM for Thunderbolt. I'm noting this now because it is going to end up being a time loss. I don't actually use Thunderbolt at all throughout this playthrough. Next, I have to face the rival in Canalave City, and this is where his team starts getting extremely strong. Luckily for me, the Staraptor does not know close combat, so when I fail to knock it out, it isn't the end of the world. Takedown doesn't do very much, and I finish it next. Then I can use Bounce for 4 times damage against the Heracross. Alright, so Infernape will take more damage from return, but it's not enough to one-shot. The fighting type uses Brick Break, but it still doesn't do very much because I'm quite over-leveled. Floatzel is a one-hit, as well as the following Roserade. Inside Byron's gym, I get to see just how good Jump Kick is going to be against Steelix, and the answer is not very good, even though it's super effective. Black Belt Ricky, who is the first trainer in the gym, he has a level 38 Steelix. I'm only doing roughly 1/3 damage to it on each turn. I guess this minimal damage is helpful in some ways because I'll deal less to myself in recoil if Jump Kick misses. That said, I am still feeling quite confident against Byron. First, he sends in Magneton. I go for Substitute because this thing loves to use Metal Sound on the first turn of battle, and I successfully predicted it, blocking the status move. After that, I use Jump Kick, just barely not one-shotting, and Magneton hits with Thunderbolt. Luckily, my substitute stays in place. He uses a healing item, and I finish it off with 2 more reliable returns. Okay, Steelix, let's do this. Jump Kick does a 3rd, it sets up Sandstorm, then I crash because I miss. The recoil damage breaks my substitute, and I take Sandstorm damage. I re-establish my substitute, but Sandstorm is dealing damage even when it's in place. As a result, I am on a timer, and the worst thing in this case is for Byron to use a full restore, saving his Steelix, and because of that, it finishes me with Earthquake. Now I open my inventory, and the cursor is buffered on the Fist Plate, which is obviously the item that I should be using for this fight, but no, instead I randomly scroll around because I'm looking for rare candies, and then I use these items, boosting Lopunny up to level 56 before the next battle. And no, I'm not using the Fist Plate. Believe me, this is more frustrating for me to watch than it is for you to watch, so suffer with me. That said, the levels are all I need because I can now one-shot the Magneton and two-shot the Steelix. Because of that, I still have my substitute in place by the time the Bastiodon comes out, and obviously Jump Kick does 4 times damage, so that's the confident victory that I was expecting from the start. The fights against the following commanders are not noteworthy, and with them out of the way, I head towards Snow Point City. Along the way, I pick up the Nevermelt Ice. This is another case of me grabbing an item which I'm just not going to use, even though it would be useful. However, that's not the most egregious mistake that I make on this leg of the playthrough. Just as I pass the little house where you can rest up, I don't heal, and then Ace Trainer Garrett catches me. Yeah, this battle is problematic because he has a Dusclops, and I have Bounce. which by the way only has 5 PP. I don't get why that's the case, but either way it's the situation I'm in, and it is very bad because the Dusclops has so much defense, triple digits actually, and it also can burn me with Will-O-Wisp, lowering my physical damage. As a result, Lopunny faints, and I have to make a tough call, which in this case is going to be taking the Blackout and backtracking all the way through Mount Coronet again. You will note here that my reset counter does not increment because I'm no longer counting Blackouts as the same metric. They're going to be 2 separate metrics, and I will add them together into a unified metric called faults at the end of the video. By the way, thank you for commenting this word suggestion for the name of this metric because fails just didn't seem right. This time I'm able to successfully dodge Garrett and head north towards Snowpoint City. On my way, I make sure to stop by this isolated house to pick up the spell tag. After all, it might be useful in combination with Shadow Ball. Because coming up next is Candace, and her ace is a ghost type. Weather is relevant for this fight because if you set up a substitute, you still take damage from hail. Knowing this, I didn't think it made sense to set up on the Sneasel, so I just knock it out with 1 hit from Return. Next, she sends in Abomasnow, which starts the hail with its Snow Warning ability, and Return just barely doesn't knock it out, allowing it to use Focus Blast, which does about 1/3. Candace heals it with a Hyper Potion, but that doesn't save it. I've taken about half in damage by the time the Frostlass comes out, which is not a great position. I wanted Bounce to be able to 2-hit, but due to his Citrus Berry, it barely isn't able to. So the Frostlass is able to finish Lopunny off with Blizzard. Before the next battle, I figured out that the correct choice was replacing Bounce with Shadow Ball, so I have a better answer for ghost types. Without the Silk Scarf, I didn't want to chance the accuracy on Jump Kick, and luckily Return is still doing enough to knock the Sneasel out. Against the Abomasnow, I wanted more damage, so I went for Jump Kick, but I think objectively this is the wrong choice. If I had used Return, she might not have used a Hyper Potion on it, and I would have been hit by 1 less turn of hail. Either way, it goes down, she sends in her Frostlass, I use Shadow Ball, and it just barely survives. Its Citrus Berry activates, healing it just slightly, but not out of KO range. However, before it goes down, it does land a Blizzard, and hail chips away at Lopunny again. Candace has 1 more Pokemon, her Piloswine. Ordinarily, this thing is not a threat, but it barely survives Return. I mean just barely. There was no way that was double digits HP. As a result, it gets an Earthquake in, and that means I can't survive the hail damage. I made a key mistake in the last fight. I prioritized the accuracy of Return over the damage of Jump Kick when fighting the Piloswine. I'm conditioned by Generation 2 and Price's Piloswine, which is never really a threat. But in this case, I need to take it seriously and use the Fighting type move to deal maximum damage. With it, I'm able to knock it out, and on my 3rd attempt, I defeat Candace. The majority of the plot is next, and I don't have much to say about it, so I want to focus on Lopunny's ability, Cute Charm. In Generation 4, this gives it a 30% chance to infatuate a Pokemon of the opposite gender when it is hit by a move that makes contact. This was the better of 2 options for Lopunny because the other ability that it can have is Klutz, and this has to be one of the worst abilities because it prevents the Pokemon from being able to utilize held items. While recording this audio, I went back in and looked at my save file again to ensure that my Lopunny actually had Cute Charm, because I don't remember one instance of this ability activating. And yes, my Lopunny does have Cute Charm. Apparently it is just not very good for a solo playthrough. But you know what ability is going to be really good for a solo playthrough? No Guard. This ability essentially removes the accuracy and evasion mechanics from the game. All moves the Pokemon uses or are used against it will hit. By the way, I immediately realized that starting in Generation 4, Machop can have this ability, so I frantically went and checked my shiny Machop to see if it has the ability No Guard, and it does. Also, its attack IV is 29, which is 2 points off perfect, but it's not all good news because its special defense is 0. I am really looking forward to using this thing in a solo playthrough, now more than ever after learning how its ability works. After completing all of the random plot stuff, I have to face Cyrus in the Galactic Building. This fight is straightforward. With Return, Lopunny is able to one-hit all 3 of his Pokemon. Commander Saturn puts up a little bit more of a fight because the Bronzor survives 1 hit, but that's the best thing I can say about her performance in this battle. I backtrack through a Blizzard so I can climb this wall to gain the TM for Ice Beam. While Lopunny does have significantly lower special attack, I think that this coverage move might be useful, especially against Cynthia. area. Last time when I was in Mount Coronet, I mentioned that I can use the text box from this rare candy to bypass the spinning trainer. I failed to execute this in my Heatran run, but today I am successful. At the top of the mountain, Barry and I face Commander Mars and Jupiter. This battle's pretty straightforward. I can set up Substitute against the Bronzors, which are not very good offensively, and from there Lopunny is safe and can sweep. In the Distortion world, I have some time to contemplate if I should use rare candies before facing Cyrus. Up until now, it has been one of the hardest battles in these playthroughs. With the plentiful rare candies that Platinum provides, it seems that this is usually the best place to use them by default. But with Lopunny, I felt its access to Jump Kick was going to give it the edge it needed to go into this battle without a single rare candy. So let's see if it can do it, starting at level 63. Houndoom is first. I get a little bit risky trying to establish a substitute against it, and Flamethrower doesn't break it. That is fantastic. Maybe, just maybe, I'll block the Gyarados' Intimidate. Return one-shots the fire type, then he sends in Haunch Crow, and once again Return gets the job done. He skips over his Crobat and sends in Gyarados next, so yes, I did successfully block the Intimidate. Now, I'm not able to take it out in one turn, and he does use a healing item, but with my attack maintained, I'm feeling very good about my chances. The Weavile's Fake Out does a little bit of damage, but of course Jump Kick easily one-shots, and now he only has Crobat left. And because Lopunny loves me a lot, Return does so much damage and Crobat faints to a single hit. That battle was incredibly straightforward. I am feeling very good about Lopunny's chances from here. Volkner is next. I'm very overleveled, of course, so I'm faster than all the electric types, and Return is able to sweep. Well, except the Luxray, it does survive, paralyze me, he uses a full restore. I was a bit worried because I actually take a lot of damage here, but just as I'm taking under half health, I'm able to move again and take it back to red. Luxray hits with another Thunderfang, taking me down to 65 health, and then Cute Charm activates. So that's the first time that I am noticing it activate, but it has no impact on the fight because my next Return hits, and with that Luxray goes down. I'm really hoping that I'm going to be able to clock in under the 3-hour mark. Right now it seems like it's going to be possible unless something really slows Lopunny down. There's no fighting type specialist in the Elite Four, but Cynthia does have a Lucario, which could be slightly problematic. That said, by the time I'm finishing Victory Road, I will have a total of 11 rare candies, which is going to boost my level into the 80s. I felt that before using them, it was better to see if I could get through some of the League members first. But before that even, I have to take on the rival. His first Pokemon is Staraptor, which is an unfortunate lead because I can't block its Intimidate using Substitute. I try to set up my defense on the next turn, but Close Combat just breaks it right away. Oh, that's actually good because now the Staraptor has lower defenses and I can just knock it out. Next, he sends in Heracross. I went for Return hoping for the one hit, but I don't get it. And as a result, it deals massive damage with Close Combat. I should have used Substitute there like I did against the Staraptor. Because of that, his third Pokemon with a fighting type move comes out next and it finishes me off. In my next attempt, I try to play around Close Combat with Substitute, allowing me to knock out both the Staraptor and the Heracross in a single hit each. There is a consequence, of course, to doing things this way. By the time I make it to the Infernape, I do not have a defense set up, and I'm also not able to one-hit it with Return, leading to Focus Blast, knocking Lopunny out for a second time. I think it's time to use rare candies. Since I'm about to level up, I go back to Victory Road, fight some wild Pokemon, get to 70, and then I use all 11, taking Lopunny up to level 81. I'm so overleveled now, I figured I could just one-hit the Staraptor with Return, and I am correct. The same is true for the Heracross. He sends in Infernape, it also goes down to one hit, and with that I have bypassed all of the Pokemon with fighting type moves. Floatzel is a fourth one-hit, and then Snorlax comes out and it survives. It retaliates with Body Slam, which luckily does not paralyze, and with that, I clean up his Roserade and earn access to the Elite Four. Aaron is up first. I just want to take the time that we have during this fight to mention how awesome I think it is that they decided to have a bug-type specialist in the Elite Four. With that compliment out of the way, I am now going to air my grievance, which is that for solo challenges, I don't think he is ever going to be a problem unless I decide to ban rare candies. At this point in the game, I will have access to a total of 20 if I haven't used them formerly in the playthrough, and even if I had, my Pokemon is going to be somewhere around level 70 to 80. The consequence is that all of Aaron's Pokemon, which are around level 50, just never can really put up a fight. I'm hoping in the future a Pokemon that is weak to bug type moves will struggle here, but I'm not going to hold my breath. Bertha is next, and she could be a little bit more challenging. I one-shot the Whiscash as well as the Gliscor with a critical hit. It probably would have survived because it has massive defenses. Next she sends in Hippowdon, and this one does survive, allowing it to use Stone Edge, which does almost nothing. She uses a full restore, I knock it out over 2 more turns, and then she sends in Golem. While Jump Kick is super effective, the rock type has great defense, so it survives, hitting Earthquake, taking Lopunny to about half. Bertha uses a full restore, which buys time for Sandstorm to chip away at Lopunny. Consequently, by the time the Rhyperior comes out, I only have 80 hit points left. Jump Kick does more than half. It eats its Citrus Berry, healing to green, and then uses Avalanche, which takes me to red health. The Sandstorm rages, chipping away, and if I don't get the knockout on this next turn, she will win. So Jump Kick, please don't miss, and in this case it doesn't, but unfortunately Rhyperior survives, uses Mega Horn, and Lopunny has a reset. I played my next fight here differently, setting up Substitute against the Whiscash before one-hitting it. As I predicted, the Gliscor is able to survive a single hit from return, but it isn't able to break my Substitute. The Hippowdon that's next is a great demonstration of how bad the AI can be in Pokemon games. In this case it knows the move Yawn, but it has no idea this is just going to fail if I have a Substitute set up. With its turn wasted, I'm able to knock it out and move on to the Golem with my Substitutes still in place. Now, the Rock Ground type does break it, but because Bertha is using a full restore, I'm able to knock it out, sustaining only damage from Sandstorm. That said, Lopunny doesn't have a Substitute, and its health is low against the Rhyperior. Plus, we know that Jump Kick is not going to one-shot. Well, unless I get a critical hit. So, luck was what I needed here. With it, I'm able to move on to Flint. I think everything that I mentioned during the Aaron battle applies here as well. Even in the case that the Infernape has super effective damage against Lopunny, I'm just far too overleveled. Lucian's next, and honestly it's the same scenario here once again. Of the Elite Four, I think that Bertha really is the exception. At this point, I definitely think she is the strongest member. Well, the Bronzong is actually probably the strongest member. This thing always takes a long time to knock out, and today it's actually a little bit scary because its Psychic gets a critical hit, taking Lopunny down to orange health. Fortunately though, I have it on the run because my next Shadow Ball would have done enough damage even if it didn't get a critical hit. So that's it for the Elite Four, but will Cynthia follow the trend and be easy because I'm over leveled? Well, let's find out. Her lead is Spiritomb, and I don't really have good damage against it. That said, it's mostly defensive, so I figured setting up Substitute would be possible here. Unfortunately, I'm taking too much damage, so before I knock it out, it breaks my first Substitute. I set up a second one, knock it out, and then Cynthia sends in Lucario. Its Aura Sphere is going to hit really hard, so I need Jump Kick to come through here with a one-hit. But unfortunately, when it really counts, this move misses, Lopunny takes massive recoil, and Lucario breaks my Substitute. It follows all of this up with extreme speed. Lopunny survives on 6 hit points, and Jump Kick does enough to get the one hit. But this is not a good situation. I have no access to recovery, and I don't think I can knock the Togekiss out. Return is my go-to move here. Unfortunately, the tanky flying type survives, and then uses Aura Sphere, finishing Lopunny off. So Cynthia is proving to not be the same as the former League members. She can be a challenge even if you are 20 levels higher. I thought the solution was fairly simple. If I just don't miss my Jump Kick against the Lucario, I should be fine. That said, my next battle against the Spiritomb is much worse, because this time it breaks 2 of my Substitutes, and then I don't have my defenses set up against the Lucario. This time, Jump Kick comes through for me, knocking it out, but the Togekiss takes me to red with Aura Sphere, and while I do knock it out, it's just not enough, because her Garchomp easily survives return and finishes Lopunny off. As I said before, I think Ice Beam could be useful for this fight, and I have realized it now. If I put it in the place of Substitute, I think I'll have my best chance of defeating her. Setting up against the Spiritomb didn't really seem to help anyways. Instead, I'm just going to try and knock it out as fast as is possible. Well, that is, if she doesn't switch it out and make me use an Ice Beam on the Lucario. However, that switch-in was really not a good idea, because then I can just finish it off with Jump Kick and move on to the Togekiss, which now I can two-shot using Ice Beam followed by Return. turn. By the way, I just didn't want to run out of PP before the Garchomp comes in. She sends it out next, and with 4 times damage, even though I have a lower special attack, Lopunny can still get the one hit. Cynthia chooses Milotic next. This thing loves to spam Mirror Coat, which of course fails when I'm using a physical move, and as a result I take it out for free. Spiritomb comes back in, I finish it using 2 more Shadow Balls, and all that's left is Roserade. While this Pokemon is a great design, and I do like the fact that they gave Roselia an evolution, it always feels like the AI sends it out last, which is not a good sign. Usually the game is picking the next Pokemon based on its moveset and type effectiveness. This Roserade really just shows how bad the grass and poison types are offensively. With her final Pokemon cleaned up, Lopunny clocks in with its first playthrough time of 3 hours, 1 minute, and 54 seconds. It had a total of 12 resets, finished the game at level 84, and this was with a game time of 8 hours and 40 minutes. These results are slightly slower than Cresselia's time of 2 hours, 58 minutes, and 17 seconds. Also, Lopunny had less resets, and as a result, its game time is significantly higher than Cresselia's 7 hours and 44 minutes. Interestingly enough though, Lopunny's real time is faster than Infernape's, which was 3 hours, 6 minutes, and 34 seconds. That said, Infernape did have 2 more resets, but its game time was significantly lower, 8 hours and 15 minutes. Also, I should note that Infernape finished the game 3 levels higher, largely due to the fact that it has the medium slow growth rate. Right now I would hypothesize that when I come back and play these 2 again, I will get better results with Infernape when compared with Lopunny. Access to Swords Dance is just so fantastic, but for now I am ranking based on real time, so Lopunny is going to earn the 2nd spot in the B tier just behind Cresselia. Still, even Empoleon had a better game time of 8 hours and 30 minutes, so Lopunny wasn't a particularly good Pokemon to solo run the game with. I think the fact that it stuck as a Baniri for a long time really held it back. And that made me ask a question. I wonder how another normal type would do in a solo run of this game. Maybe one you can obtain early on that has a fantastic secondary typing when it evolves. Also, what if that Pokemon had a useful ability that would synergize very well with its moveset? Well, that leads us to the next run that I'm going to be doing in Pokemon Platinum. I think you have enough information to figure it out if you paid attention. If you support me directly on Patreon or through YouTube memberships, thank you so much, it means the world to me. If you've made it this far, you're incredible. I'll see you in my next video.